The crystal throne room stretched for miles in every direction. Its walls were made of living glass that pulsed with soft blue light. At the center of this vast space sat King Zephyros on his neural throne. The throne was not just a seat of power. It was a machine that connected his mind to every ship in his empire. Zephyros was old, even by Valdarian standards. His skin was pale blue and covered in silver markings that showed his royal blood. His eyes glowed with the same blue light as his throne room walls. He had ruled the Valdarian Empire for over 3,000 years. In that time, he had conquered 847 star systems across 3 arms of the galaxy. Today, General Kythera stood before him with new reports. She was smaller than the king, but just as deadly. Her 4 arms moved as she activated a holographic display. The image showed a small blue planet orbiting a yellow star. "My lord," Kythera said in her musical voice, "our scouts have found another primitive world. They call it Earth. The species calls themselves humans." Zephyros leaned forward on his throne. The neural connections in his skull glowed brighter as he accessed the data. Information flowed directly into his mind. He saw images of the human homeworld, their small cities, their simple technology. "How long have they had space travel?" he asked. "Only 50 of their years, my lord. They have barely left their own star system. Their ships are made of metal alloys. No biomechanical enhancement. No quantum shielding. They use chemical rockets and primitive fusion drives." The king laughed, a sound like crystal bells breaking. "Chemical rockets? Are you certain these creatures have intelligence?" Kythera's lower arms gestured to new images. These showed human soldiers, their cities, their crude spacecraft. "They fight among themselves constantly, my lord. Their wars are brutal but unorganized. They have no unified government, no central command structure." Zephyros studied the tactical data flowing through his mind. Human weapons were projectile-based. They fired metal slugs and explosive devices. Their largest ships were smaller than Valdarian escort vessels. Their strongest weapons could barely scratch the hull of a Valdarian fighter. "They are like children playing with fire," he said. "What threat assessment do our tacticians give them?" "Level 0, my lord. The lowest possible rating. Our analysts believe a single battlecruiser could conquer their entire world. They have no defenses against orbital bombardment. No shields that could stop our plasma cannons." The king stood from his throne. His tall form cast long shadows across the crystal floor. He walked to the great window that showed the stars of his empire. Each point of light represented worlds under his control. Billions of beings who served the Valdarian way. "Tell me about their military," he commanded. Kythera activated new displays. "They have several competing factions, my lord. The largest nations maintain space-based military forces, but these are small. Their most advanced ship carries perhaps 200 crew members. Our dreadnoughts carry 50,000. Do they have any defensive installations? A few orbital platforms around their homeworld. Space stations with basic weapons. Nothing that could threaten a proper warship. Their most advanced technology appears to be artificial intelligence, but even this is primitive compared to our bioneural networks." Zephyros turned back to his general. His glowing eyes showed his amusement. "Artificial intelligence? How quaint. These humans try to build minds from metal and electricity. Do they not understand that only living consciousness can truly think?" "It appears not, my lord. Their AIs are crude compared to our organic computers. They seem to believe that adding more processing power will create intelligence." The king returned to his throne. The neural connections activated again, linking him to the greatest military force in the galaxy. Through the link, he could sense every ship, every commander, every weapon in his vast fleet. The power was intoxicating. "General Kythera," he said, his voice echoing through the throne room, "I grow bored with our current campaigns. The Centauri resistance has been crushed. The vegan colonies have surrendered. Even the warrior clans of Arcturus now bow before our might. Yes, my lord, your victories have brought peace to the galaxy. Peace through strength," Zephyros agreed. "But I hunger for something new. This human world interests me, not because they pose any threat, but because they amuse me. Creatures so primitive trying to reach for the stars." Kythera waited silently. She knew her king well enough to recognize when he was forming a plan. "I hereby decree," Zephyros announced, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority, "that the human homeworld will fall within 7 rotations. Not because we need their resources, not because they threaten us, but because I will it. My lord, surely a small task force would be sufficient. Perhaps a few hundred ships?" The king's laughter filled the throne room. "No, my dear general. I want these humans to understand the full might of the Valdarian Empire. I want their final moments to be filled with awe at our power." He stood again and spread his arms wide. The neural throne pulsed with energy as it connected to military command centers across the galaxy. "Send the Royal Conquest fleet," he commanded. 10,000 ships. Our finest vessels. Our most experienced crews. I want the humans to see what true civilization looks like before they are conquered. Kithra bowed low. "My lord, the royal fleet is your personal armada. Surely such overwhelming force is unnecessary against primitive humans." "Unnecessary?" Zephyros smiled, showing teeth like pearls. "Perhaps, but it will be magnificent. When word spreads that I deployed the royal fleet against a single primitive world, all the galaxy will remember the price of defying Valdarian rule. Who will you appoint to command this conquest?" "Admiral Nexus Prime. He has never known defeat. His tactical brilliance has won us 100 worlds. Let him add Earth to his collection." The general bowed again. "It will be done, my lord. Shall I tell the admiral to preserve the human population for slavery?" Zephyros considered this for a moment. "No," he said finally. "Let Nexus Prime use standard conquest doctrine. If the humans surrender immediately, they may serve. If they resist," he shrugged, "then they will serve as an example." Through his neural link, the king sent orders across the galaxy. The Royal Conquest Fleet began to gather at the staging point near Vega. 10,000 ships of war, each one a masterpiece of Aldarian engineering. Biomechanical hulls that could repair themselves. Quantum shields that could deflect any known weapon. Plasma cannons that could crack planets. Zephyros settled back into his throne, already savoring his victory. In 7 rotations, the human homeworld would fly Valdarian banners. Their primitive technology would be studied and discarded. Their people would learn to serve a superior race. What could possibly go wrong? Deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, Admiral Jake Morrison stood in the war room of Terran Defense Command. The room was carved from solid rock and lined with screens showing data from across the solar system. Morrison was a tall man with gray hair and steady blue eyes. He had spent 30 years preparing for this moment. "Sir," called Lieutenant Amy Cross from her station. "Deep space sensors are picking up massive energy signatures near Vega. The patterns match Valdarian fleet movements." Morrison nodded calmly. "How many ships?" "Computer estimates between 8 and 12,000 vessels, sir. It's the largest fleet movement we've ever detected." Dr. Lisa Park looked up from her workstation. She was the head of Applied Xenological Defense, a small woman with sharp green eyes and an even sharper mind. "Admiral, this fits the pattern of a Royal Conquest fleet. The Valdarians only deploy forces this large when they want to make a statement." "What kind of statement?" asked Colonel Pete Williams, the base commander. "Total domination," Park replied. "They're not just planning to conquer Earth. They want to demonstrate their power to the entire galaxy. This is psychological warfare on a massive scale." Morrison walked to the central display table. A holographic image of the solar system appeared above it. Red dots marked the positions of hidden defense platforms throughout the system. "Dr. Park, what's the status of Project Lazarus?" Park's fingers danced across her control panel. New symbols appeared on the hologram. "All systems are online and have been for the past 6 months. The AIs have run over 10,000 combat simulations using captured Valdarian tactical data." "Captured data?" Williams looked surprised. "How did we get Valdarian tactical information?" "The same way we've gotten everything else," Morrison said grimly. "We stole it. For 30 years, we've been intercepting their communications, studying their battle footage, analyzing every piece of technology we could find." Park nodded. "Humans have one advantage that no other species seems to possess. We learn from our enemies. While the Valdarians stick to traditional tactics that haven't changed in centuries, we've been adapting. Captain Ryan Bell entered the war room. He commanded the Earth Defense Ship Defiant, one of humanity's newest vessels. Admiral, all fleet commanders are reporting ready status. The boys and girls are eager to show these aliens what Earth hospitality looks like. Morrison smiled at that. Human military culture was unique in the galaxy. Where other species treated warfare as a formal ritual, humans approached it like a deadly game. They found ways to joke about the most serious situations. Captain Bell, remind me of our total force strength, Morrison said. 247 combat vessels of various classes, sir. 15 major orbital defense platforms. The Lunar Fortress Complex. And of course, the grid. The grid was humanity's secret weapon. Dr. Park had spent 20 years developing it. Unlike other species who built individual powerful weapons, humans had created a network. Every platform, every ship, every weapon system could share data instantly through quantum communication links. Dr. Park, Morrison said, explain to Captain Bell how the grid works differently from alien systems. Park activated a new display. It showed the flow of information between Earth's defenses. Other species build hierarchical command structures. Orders flow from commanders down to individual units. If you destroy the command ship, the entire fleet becomes confused. And our system? Bell asked. We don't have a command ship. Every unit in the grid is both a commander and a soldier. If you destroy 90% of our forces, the remaining 10% becomes smarter, not weaker. The grid learns from every battle, every loss, every victory. Williams shook his head in amazement. So we're not just fighting with ships and weapons. We're fighting with the entire solar system as a single intelligent entity. Exactly, Park said. The Valdarians will be expecting to fight a human fleet. Instead, they'll be fighting a distributed artificial intelligence that has been studying their tactics for decades. Morrison turned to another officer. Commander Helen Stone, what's the status of the asteroid platforms? Stone was a thin woman with short brown hair. She managed a hidden weapon system scattered throughout the asteroid belt. All platforms are powered down and running silent, sir. From the outside, they look like ordinary asteroids. Our sensor deflection systems are working perfectly. How many platforms do we have out there? 436 major installations, sir. Each one contains enough firepower to destroy a Valdarian battlecruiser, plus about 2,000 smaller hunter-killer platforms. Bell whistled softly. And the aliens have no idea they're there? None at all, Stone replied. We've been building them for 15 years. Every mining operation, every asteroid survey mission was actually a cover for weapons placement. Park brought up another display. The beauty of the asteroid defense is that it doesn't look like a defense. The Valdarians will enter the system expecting to face our ships near Earth. Instead, they'll find themselves surrounded by weapons they can't detect until it's too late. Morrison nodded approvingly. What about the lunar fortresses? All 8 fortress complexes are operational, reported Major Tom Hayes from a station. We've hollowed out massive caverns inside the moon and filled them with railgun batteries. Each fortress can fire projectiles at 12% of light speed. Kinetic weapons, Morrison mused. The Valdarians won't expect those. Their shields are designed to deflect energy beams, not solid projectiles moving at relativistic speeds. Dr. Park smiled. That's another human advantage. While other species pursued energy weapons because they're elegant and sophisticated, we stuck with kinetic systems because they work. A chunk of metal moving fast enough will punch through any known shield. Lieutenant Cross looked up from her sensors. Admiral, we're detecting long-range communication bursts from a Valdarian staging area. They're using quantum entanglement channels. Can we intercept them? No, sir, but we can detect when they're being used. The energy signatures are distinctive. Morrison considered this information. They're probably coordinating their fleet movements. Dr. Park, how long before they arrive? Park consulted her calculations. Based on known Valdarian drive capabilities, I estimate between 18 and 36 hours. They'll want to arrive in formation to maximize psychological impact. Good. That gives us time for final preparations. Morrison turned to address the entire room. Ladies and gentlemen, what you're about to see will be the most important battle in human history. Not because we're fighting for our lives, though we are, but because we're proving that intelligence and preparation can overcome raw power. Captain Bell raised his hand. Sir, what if we're wrong? What if their technology is so advanced that nothing we have can stop them? Morrison's expression grew serious. Then we'll die fighting, and we'll make sure they remember the cost. But I don't think that's going to happen. You see, the Valdarians have one fatal weakness. What's that, sir? They think they know everything. They've conquered so many worlds using the same tactics that they can't imagine anyone doing things differently. They're about to learn that humans don't fight like anyone else in the galaxy. Dr. Park nodded. Every species they've conquered tried to match their power with power. They built bigger ships, stronger shields, more powerful weapons. And they all lost because you can't out-Valdarian the Valdarians. So what makes us different? Williams asked. We're not trying to out-Valdarian them, Morrison replied. We're going to out-human them. We're going to be sneaky, creative, unpredictable, and absolutely ruthless. We're going to use their own strength against them. Lieutenant Cross spoke up again. Admiral, the quantum communications have stopped. I think they're starting to move. Morrison nodded. All right, people, this is it. Activate the Terran defense grid. Send a recall signal to all civilian traffic. I want every human ship either hidden or ready to fight. Across the solar system, hidden weapons platforms came online. Artificial intelligences that have been learning and planning for decades activated their combat protocols. The asteroid belt became a minefield. The moon bristled with weapons. Earth itself prepared to defend its children. One more thing, Morrison said as his staff prepared to take their battle stations. Remember what we're fighting for. We're not just defending Earth. We're defending the idea that smaller, smarter forces can defeat larger, dumber ones. We're proving that preparation and innovation matter more than size and tradition. Captain Bell grinned. Sir, if I may say so, these aliens picked the wrong species to mess with. Morrison returned the grin. Captain, I couldn't agree more. Now let's go show the galaxy what happens when you threaten humanity's home. The Eternal Dominion dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of Earth's solar system like a falling mountain. Admiral Nexus Prime stood on his command bridge, watching the tactical displays show his fleet's arrival. 10,000 ships materialized in perfect formation around his flagship. The sight would have been beautiful if it weren't so terrifying. Nexus Prime was considered the finest military mind in the Valdarian Empire. His blue skin was marked with gold tattoos that recorded his victories. 47 worlds had fallen to his tactical genius. Today, he would add number 48 to his collection. Status report, he commanded in his deep voice. All ships have arrived safely, Admiral, reported his tactical officer, Commander Vex. Fleet formation is perfect. No casualties during the jump. Excellent. Begin standard sweep of the system. I want full tactical data on human defensive capabilities. The massive fleet began to move inward toward the small blue world. Nexus Prime studied the sensor readings flowing across his screens. The humans had several space stations orbiting their planet. A few dozen ships were scattered throughout the system. Nothing that posed any real threat. Admiral, called a communications officer, we're receiving transmissions from the human homeworld. Multiple sources. They appear to be trying to contact us. Put the strongest signal through the translator. A moment later, a human voice filled the bridge. It spoke in their primitive language, but the translator converted it instantly. Unknown vessels. This is Commander Kate Sullivan of the Terran Defense Force. Please identify yourselves and state your intentions. Nexus Prime smiled. Even now, facing overwhelming force, the humans tried to sound official and commanding. It was almost charming in its futility. Commander Kate Sullivan sat on the bridge of her flagship, Terra's Wrath. She was a woman in her 40s with short black hair and cold gray eyes. She had fought in the Centauri border wars against alien pirates. Those experiences had taught her that the galaxy was full of dangerous species. Ma'am, said her tactical officer, Lieutenant Ben Shaw. "I'm reading 10,000 enemy vessels. They're maintaining perfect formation. This isn't a random attack. It's a full military conquest." Sullivan nodded grimly. "Any response to our hail?" "Yes, ma'am. Incoming transmission now." The main screen activated, showing the face of Admiral Nexus Prime. His alien features were stern and confident. When he spoke, his words were translated into English. "I am Admiral Nexus Prime of the Royal Valdarian Fleet. By order of King Zephyros, ruler of 847 star systems, your world is hereby claimed for the Valdarian Empire. You have one rotation to surrender unconditionally. Comply, and your people will be allowed to serve the Empire. Resist, and your world will be cleansed of all life." The alien's image disappeared, leaving Sullivan staring at a blank screen. Around her, the bridge crew waited for her response. These men and women had trained for this moment, but facing in reality was different than running simulations. "Lieutenant Shaw," Sullivan said calmly, "send a response on all frequencies. Make sure every ship in both fleets can hear it." "Yes, ma'am. You're on open channel." Sullivan stood and faced the main screen. Her voice was steady and clear. "Admiral Nexus Prime, this is Commander Kate Sullivan of Earth. We have received your demand for surrender. Earth's answer is no. Come and take it. On Eternal Dominion." Nexus Prime stared at his screen in surprise. He had expected fear, panic, maybe desperate attempts at negotiation. Instead, the human female had responded with defiance. It was almost refreshing. "Admiral," said Commander Vex, "should we proceed with standard intimidation protocols?" "No," Nexus Prime replied thoughtfully. "These humans intrigue me. They show courage even facing impossible odds. Let us begin the conquest, but take them alive. I want to study them." The Valdarian fleet began to advance into the solar system. Their formation was a thing of beauty, elegant lines of ships moving in perfect harmony. It was the same formation that had broken the resistance of 47 worlds. What Nexus Prime didn't know was that human combat computers had been studying this exact formation for 20 years. Every ship movement, every tactical decision, every weakness had been analyzed and cataloged. The humans knew how Valdarians fought better than most Valdarians did. Commander Sullivan watched the alien fleet approach on her tactical display. "All ships," this is Sullivan, "execute Defense Plan Alpha. Remember your training. Remember what we're fighting for." Across the solar system, human ships began to move, but they didn't charge forward to meet the aliens in glorious battle. Instead, they seemed to scatter and run. To Valdarian eyes, it looked like panic and cowardice. "Admiral," reported Commander Vex with satisfaction, "the human ships are retreating in disorder. Some are heading for the outer planets. Others are diving toward their star. They have no coherent defensive strategy." Nexus Prime frowned. Something felt wrong. In 47 previous conquests, enemy fleets had always tried one of three strategies. They either met his forces head-on in a doomed attempt at heroism, or they formed defensive positions around their homeworld, or they tried to negotiate for better surrender terms. Running away in random directions wasn't a strategy at all. Unless... "Commander Vex, are you certain the humans are retreating?" "Positive, Admiral. Sensors show their ships moving at maximum speed away from our advance. Some have even activated distress beacons." On Terra's Wrath, Commander Sullivan smiled as she watched the tactical display. The Valdarian fleet was advancing exactly as predicted. Their ships maintained perfect formation, their movements textbook examples of classical space warfare. "Lieutenant Shaw," she said quietly, "signal the asteroid platforms. Tell them the guests are arriving on schedule." "Message sent, ma'am. The rocks are ready to party." Sullivan's smile grew wider. For 30 years, humanity had prepared for this moment. Every asteroid mining mission had been a cover story. Every survey expedition had placed weapons. Every seemingly random piece of space debris was actually a sophisticated weapon platform. The Valdarians were about to learn that humans didn't fight fair. Admiral Nexus Prime continued to feel uneasy as his fleet advanced through the asteroid belt. His sensors showed nothing but rocks and ice. Occasionally, they detected the heat signature of a fleeing human ship, but nothing that posed any threat. Admiral called his science officer. "I'm detecting some unusual readings from the asteroids. Trace amounts of refined metals. Possible industrial activity. Elaborate. The humans appear to have been mining these asteroids extensively. There are artificial tunnels and chambers throughout the belt, but they seem to be abandoned now." Nexus Prime nodded. "Primitive resource extraction, typical of young civilizations. Continue the advance." What he didn't realize was that those abandoned mining tunnels were actually weapon bays. The trace amounts of refined metal were fusion reactors and railgun batteries. The asteroid belt had become the largest minefield in galactic history. Commander Sullivan checked her chronometer. 30 seconds to contact. She announced to her crew, "All hands, prepare for combat." Light years away, King Zephyros sat on his crystal throne, watching the battle through his neural link. He could see through the eyes of every ship captain, feel the confidence of his admiral, sense the approaching victory. "Soon," he murmured to himself, "the humans will learn the price of defying the Valdarian Empire." But deep in the asteroid belt, hidden weapons were powering up. Artificial intelligences that had studied Valdarian tactics for decades were making final calculations. Human crews were taking their positions at weapon controls. Earth was about to show the galaxy that humanity had its own way of fighting wars. And it was nothing like what the Valdarians expected. The first asteroid split open like a deadly flower. Admiral Nexus Prime watched in shock as what had appeared to be ordinary space rock suddenly revealed hidden weapon bays. Massive railgun barrels emerged from concealed hatches. Missile tubes opened like hungry mouths. What had seemed like empty space was suddenly alive with weapons. "All ships, evasive maneuvers," he shouted, but it was already too late. The asteroid-designated rock, 7 by human forces, fired its first salvo. 12 railgun projectiles streaked toward the Valdarian advance guard at tremendous speed. The aliens' energy shields, designed to deflect plasma beams and laser fire, were useless against chunks of dense metal moving at 12% of light speed. The Valdarian destroyer Crimson Talon simply ceased to exist. One moment it was there, the next it was expanding debris and superheated gas. Lieutenant Colonel Ben Foster coordinated the asteroid defense from his command bunker deep inside Ceres Station. Around him, dozens of operators managed the hidden weapon platforms scattered throughout the belt. Each platform operated independently, but they all shared data through quantum communication links. Rock 7 reports successful target elimination, announced Sergeant Lucy Grant from her station. "Enemy formation is beginning to break up." "Good," Foster replied calmly. "Activate platforms 12 through 47. Let's give them something to really worry about." Across the asteroid belt, 36 more platforms revealed themselves. The space around the Valdarian fleet erupted with weapons fire. Railgun projectiles, guided missiles, and particle beams lanced out for what had appeared to be empty rock. On Eternal Dominion, Commander Vex struggled to make sense of the tactical display. "Admiral, I'm reading weapons fire from over 40 positions. But there's nothing there. Our sensors show only asteroids." Nexus Prime's mind raced. How could rocks be shooting at them? Run full spectrum analysis. Maximum power to sensors. The enhanced scans revealed the truth. The asteroids were hollow. They contained sophisticated weapon systems, power plants, and crew quarters. The humans had turned the entire asteroid belt into a defensive network. "Impossible," breathed Commander Vex. "They've weaponized an entire asteroid field. The engineering required is beyond anything we've seen from a primitive species." Nexus Prime finished. He was beginning to realize that human intelligence reports had been seriously flawed. The asteroid platforms didn't fight like conventional weapons. Instead of trying to match Valdarian firepower with firepower, they used tactics no civilized species would consider. Platforms deliberately missed their targets, then activated proximity warheads that burst into millions of guided fragments. Single asteroids fired dozens of different weapon types simultaneously, forcing enemy ships to defend against multiple attack vectors at once. Captain Mary Clark commanded the hidden platform inside asteroid Delta 9. Her crew of 20 humans operated from a command center carved out of solid rock. They had been living inside this asteroid for 3 years, waiting for this moment. Target the enemy flagship's escort group. She ordered her weapons officer. Fire Pattern Delta. Pattern Delta was a human innovation that no alien military had ever encountered. Instead of concentrating firepower on single targets, it scattered shots across multiple enemy ships simultaneously. The goal wasn't to destroy individual vessels, but to damage as many as possible and force them to withdraw for repairs. He platform-fired 18 projectiles in rapid succession. Each one followed a different trajectory, creating a web of destruction that the Valdarian escorts couldn't avoid. 3 ships were destroyed outright. 5 more suffered serious damage and fell out of formation. Admiral Nexus Prime watched his neat formations dissolve into chaos. Ships scattered in all directions, tried to avoid the continuous fire from hidden platforms. But every time they identified one weapon position, 3 more revealed themselves. "Sir," called his communications officer, "Captain Zarn reports that his destroyer wing is taking heavy casualties. He's requesting permission to withdraw." "Denied," Nexus Prime snapped. "We outnumber them 10,000 to 1. Continue the advance." But the numbers didn't matter when you couldn't find your enemies. The asteroid platforms were nearly impossible to detect until they opened fire. By the time Valdarian ships could target them, they had already launched their weapons and closed their hatches again. Lieutenant Colonel Foster watched the battle unfold on his tactical display. The Valdarians were trying to adapt their traditional formation, fighting to deal with the asteroid threat. But their tactics assumed they were fighting other ships in open space, not hidden weapons that could appear and disappear at will. "Colonel," reported Sergeant Grant, "enemy forces are attempting to bypass the asteroid belt. Several squadrons are diving below the orbital plane." Foster smiled. "Activate the deep field platforms. Show them there's nowhere to run." The Valdarians soon discovered that the human weapon network extended far beyond the main asteroid belt. Hidden platforms orbited at every major gravitational point in the system. Weapons were concealed on moons, inside comet nuclei, even attached to space debris. Captain Rick Stone commanded a hunter-killer platform hidden in Jupiter's Trojan asteroids. His weapon was different from the larger installations. Instead of heavy railguns, his platform deployed swarms of autonomous drones. "Release the Hornets," he ordered. 200 small drones launched from concealed bays. Each one was no larger than human fist, but they carried sophisticated guidance systems and shaped charges. They moved in unpredictable patterns, making them nearly impossible to target with conventional weapons. The drone swarm fell on a group of Valdarian cruisers, like angry insects. Individual drones were too small to damage the massive ships, but they didn't attack individually. Instead, they coordinated their assault, with dozens of drones striking the same target simultaneously. The cruiser Heavy Wind found itself swarmed by 50 drones, all attacking the same section of hull. The cumulative damage was devastating. Armor cracked, then shattered. Internal systems failed. The mighty warship listed helplessly as atmosphere vented from multiple breaches. Admiral Nexus Prime realized he was facing something unprecedented. Human tactics made no sense according to traditional military doctrine. They attacked from hiding. They used tiny weapons against large targets. They seemed to prefer causing damage to causing destruction. "Admiral," Commander Vex reported, "we've lost over 300 ships. Enemy fire is coming from all directions. Our formation integrity is completely broken. How many weapon platforms have we destroyed in return?" 17 confirmed, sir, but new ones keep appearing. It's like fighting ghosts. Nexus Prime made a decision that would have been unthinkable an hour earlier. Signal the fleet. Begin bombardment of the asteroids. If we can't target the weapons, we'll destroy the rocks they're hiding in. Valdarian ships turned their massive plasma cannons toward the asteroid belt. Beams of superheated energy lanced out, turning solid rock into vapor. Entire asteroids disappeared in brilliant flashes of light. But the humans had anticipated this response. Many of the platforms were mobile able to move from asteroid to asteroid through hidden tunnels. Others were buried so deep that conventional bombardment couldn't reach them. And some asteroids were decoys, hollow shells designed to look like weapon platforms while containing nothing but sensors. The real surprise came when the Valdarians began their bombardment. Several asteroids they targeted didn't just explode, they detonated. The humans had rigged some platforms with massive fusion charges, turning them into mines. When Valdarian ships got close enough to bombard them effectively, the asteroids became nuclear weapons. The destroyer Void Striker learned this lesson too late, as it closed a point-blank range to guarantee a kill shot on what appeared to be a weapon platform. The asteroid exploded with the force of a small star. The destroyer and its entire crew vanished in the blast. They're using their own platforms as weapons, Commander Vex said in disbelief. They're destroying their own fortifications to kill our ships. Nexus Prime felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature on his bridge. What kind of species would sacrifice their own defensive positions for tactical advantage? What kind of minds would turn every piece of rock in their system into a potential weapon? The answer was beginning to dawn on him. They weren't fighting a primitive species at all. They were fighting humans. And humans, he was learning, fought wars in ways that no other civilization had ever imagined. The asteroid belt had become a nightmare. Valdarian ships flew through a maze of hidden weapons, explosive traps, and swarming drones. Traditional formation fighting was impossible. Classical tactics were useless. Everything the Empire had learned about warfare over thousands of years had become a liability. "Sir," called a communications officer, "King Zephyros is requesting a status update." Nexus Prime looked at his tactical display. In just 2 hours, he had lost over 500 ships to an enemy he couldn't even see properly, and they hadn't even reached the main human defensive line yet. "Tell His Majesty," he said slowly, "that the humans are not what they appear to be." Captain Danny Wright gripped the command chair of his destroyer Lightning Strike as the ship accelerated toward the heart of the Valdarian formation. Around him, his crew worked with calm efficiency, their faces showing the determination that had carried humanity through countless conflicts. "Captain," called his tactical officer, Lieutenant Sarah Mills, "we're approaching optimal firing range. The alien formation is exactly where our computers predicted it would be." Wright nodded. The lightning strike looked primitive compared to the elegant Valdarian vessels. Its hull was angular and functional, built for maximum firepower rather than beauty. But appearances could be deceiving. "All weapon systems online," reported Chief Petty Officer Mark Johnson from the weapon station. "Adaptive targeting AI is locked onto the enemy flagship." The Adaptive Combat Network was Dr. Lisa Park's masterpiece. Unlike traditional targeting systems that simply calculated firing solutions, the network treated each battle as a learning experience. Every shot fired, every hit scored, every miss recorded became data that made the next shot more accurate. Wright watched his tactical display as the Valdarian fleet tried to reorganize after the asteroid ambush. Their ships were scattered and confused, but they still vastly outnumbered the human forces. Traditional military thinking would suggest that humans should stay at long range and try to wear down the enemy gradually. But humans didn't think traditionally. "All ships," Wright announced on the fleet channel, "execute Operation Mongoose. Let's show these aliens how we do things in Earth space." Operation Mongoose was based on a simple human observation. Larger ships were more powerful, but they were also less maneuverable. Human destroyers and frigates might not be able to match Valdarian dreadnoughts shot for shot, but they could run circles around them. The lightning strike dove directly toward the enemy formation, followed by 30 other human ships. To Valdarian eyes, it looked like a suicide attack. Their own tactical doctrine called for maintaining formation and concentrating firepower on the largest threats. Admiral Nexus Prime watched the approaching human ships with growing confusion. "They're charging directly at us. Are these humans insane? Perhaps they're attempting some form of kamikaze attack," suggested Commander Vex. "Some primitive species prefer death to surrender. Then we'll give them what they want. All ships, target the leading human vessels. Destroy them before they can reach our lines." The Valdarian fleet opened fire with devastating volleys of plasma beams. The space between the fleets lit up with deadly energy. But the human ships didn't fly straight into the fire. Instead, they jinked and weaved in patterns that seemed random but were actually carefully calculated. The Lightning Strike's navigation AI had studied Valdarian firing patterns for years. It knew exactly how their targeting computers worked, how long it took their weapons to charge between shots, how their gunners preferred to lead their targets. The ship danced through the energy fire like a leaf in a hurricane, never quite where the enemy expected it to be. Direct hit on Target 7, announced Lieutenant Mills. Their shields are fluctuating. The human weapons were different too. Instead of trying to match Valdarian plasma technology, human engineers had developed something entirely new: adaptive kinetic rounds. These projectiles change their mass and velocity in flight, making them nearly impossible to intercept with standard defensive systems. Chief Johnson fired a spread of 6 rounds at a Valdarian cruiser. The first round struck the ship's shields at high velocity, testing their frequency and power level. The second round adjusted its approach based on the first round's data. By the time the 6th round hit, it was perfectly tuned to penetrate the enemy's defenses. The cruiser's shields collapsed. The final rounds punched through the hull, causing internal explosions that lit the ship like a torch. "That's what I'm talking about," Johnson shouted. "Adaptive round for the win." But the real surprise was yet to come. As the human ships closed with the enemy formation, they deployed their secret weapon, von Neumann warfare machines. These devices were humanity's answer to overwhelming numerical superiority. Each one was a self-replicating factory the size of a small spacecraft. When they encountered destroyed enemy ships, they consumed the wreckage and used it to build more von Neumann machines. Captain Alice Brown commanded the frigate Persistence. Her ship carried the first generation of von Neumann machines into the battle zone. "Deployment successful," she reported. "The builders are active." The machines swarmed over the debris of destroyed Valdarian ships like metallic locusts. Within minutes, they had harvested enough material to create copies of themselves. The copies immediately began searching for more wreckage to consume. Admiral Nexus Prime watched his tactical display in horror as new hostile contacts appeared faster than his ships could destroy them. "Were those things?" "Unknown, sir," Commander Vex replied. "They appear to be some form of automated weapon, but they're multiplying. Each one we destroy seems to create 2 more. The von Neumann machines were programmed with one simple directive: consume enemy ships and build more machines. They didn't think or feel or fear. They just worked with mechanical efficiency, turning every destroyed Valdarian vessel into materials for more weapons." Dr. Park watched the battle unfold from her command center on Earth. Data flowed in from every human ship and platform, feeding into the adaptive combat network. The AI was learning from each engagement, becoming smarter and deadlier with every passing moment. "Fascinating," she murmured to her assistant, Dr. Robert Chun. "The Valdarian response patterns are exactly what our simulations predicted. They're trying to use traditional formation tactics against adaptive swarm intelligence." "Will it work?" Chen asked. "Watch and see." The network had identified a crucial weakness in Valdarian fleet doctrine. Their ships were designed to fight in formation, with each vessel covering specific fields of fire. If you could break the formation, individual ships became vulnerable. Human ships began implementing what they called the Shepherd strategy. Small groups of fast vessels would dart in and out of the enemy formation, not trying to destroy ships, but simply forcing them to break position. Meanwhile, other human units would exploit the gaps created by these hit-and-run attacks. Captain Wright's lightning strike exemplified the strategy. His ship would streak toward a group of enemy vessels, fire a quick volley, then veer away before they could respond effectively. The aliens would chase him, breaking their formation to do so. That's when other human ships would attack the now isolated pursuers. "It's like herding sheep," Wright told his crew. "We get them to go where we want them, then we clip the strays." The Valdarians found themselves fighting a type of warfare they had never encountered. Human ships appeared everywhere and nowhere. They struck without warning, then vanished before retaliation was possible. Traditional tactics called for maintaining formation and concentrating firepower, but the humans made formation fighting impossible. Commander Vex struggled to maintain some semblance of order among the fleet. "Admiral, our ships are being drawn out of position. The humans are using our own pursuit instinct against us." "Then we stop pursuing." Nexus Prime decided. "All ships maintain position. Do not break formation under any circumstances." But that strategy had its own problems. If Valdarian ships didn't pursue human attackers, the humans could strike at will with impunity. The human vessels would simply sit at the edge of weapons range and pick apart the alien formation one ship at a time. The Adaptive Combat Network was also learning how to exploit Valdarian weaknesses in real time. It discovered that their plasma cannons had a specific recharge cycle. Their shields had frequency resonances that could be disrupted. Their targeting computers relied on predictable algorithms. Within 3 hours of combat, the network had compiled a complete tactical profile of Valdarian military capabilities. It shared this information instantly with every human weapon system, making each shot more effective than the last. Captain Jenny Lewis commanded the heavy cruiser Indomitable. Her ship carried humanity's most advanced weapons, smart missiles that could think for themselves. "Launching full spread," she announced. "Let's see how they handle thinking ammunition." 50 missiles launched from the Indomitable's tubes. But these weren't ordinary projectiles. Each one carried a sophisticated AI that could adapt its attack pattern based on enemy responses. They flew in coordinated groups, sharing data and adjusting their approach continuously. The Valdarian point defense systems opened fire, destroying dozens of missiles. But the survivors learned from each intercept, adjusting their flight paths and countermeasures. By the time they reached their targets, they were nearly impossible to stop. Admiral Nexus Prime realized that he wasn't just fighting human ships. He was fighting human intelligence itself. Every weapon they deployed seemed to think and learn. Every tactic he tried was countered almost before he could implement it. "Sir," Commander Vex reported with barely controlled panic, "we've lost over 2,000 ships. Enemy forces appear to be increasing rather than decreasing." Nexus Prime looked at his tactical display and saw the impossible. Despite destroying hundreds of human weapons, there seemed to be more of them now than when the battle started. The Von Neumann machines were reproducing faster than they could be eliminated. For the first time in his military career, Admiral Nexus Prime considered the possibility of defeat. Not just tactical defeat, but complete and total annihilation of his forces by a supposedly primitive enemy. The humans weren't just fighting a battle. They were demonstrating a completely different philosophy of warfare. While the Valdarians fought to dominate, humans fought to survive. And that, it turned out, made all the difference. King Zephyros felt something he had never experienced in 3,000 years of rule: fear. Through his neural connection to the royal fleet, he could sense the growing panic among his forces. Ships that had seemed invincible hours earlier were being destroyed by creatures who shouldn't have posed any threat at all. "This is impossible," he whispered from his crystal throne. "How can primitives defeat my finest warriors?" The tactical data flowing through his mind told a story that defied all logic. Human weapons violated every principle of civilized warfare. They attacked from hiding. They used their own defenses as weapons. They built machines that consumed his ships and created more enemies. General Kithara stood beside the throne, her 4 arms moving frantically as she tried to coordinate reinforcements. "My lord, Admiral Nexus Prime is requesting immediate support. He reports casualties approaching 3,000 ships." 3,000? Zephyros rose from his throne in shock. "How is that possible? The humans have fewer than 300 vessels total. They appear to be using reproduction technology, my lord. Their weapons multiplied during combat. Each destroyed human platform creates several replacement units." On Earth, Admiral Morrison watched the final phase of humanity's defense begin. The Terran defense grid had proven its worth beyond all expectations. But the most devastating surprise was yet to come. "Dr. Park," Morrison said calmly, "initiate Lazarus Protocol." Full activation. Park's fingers moved across her control panel with practiced precision, activating gravitational lens array. Earth's gravity is now under our control. The Lazarus Protocol was humanity's ultimate defensive measure. For 20 years, human scientists have been building massive gravitational manipulation devices throughout Earth's crust. These devices could focus and redirect the planet's gravity field, turning Earth itself into a weapon. Commander Kate Sullivan watched from Terra's Wrath as the first gravitational pulse launched toward the Valdarian fleet. It wasn't visible to normal sensors, but the effects were devastating. Space itself began to bend and twist around the alien ships. The Valdarian destroyer Crimson Dawn was caught in the first pulse. The ship's hull began to compress as artificial gravity fields crushed it from all directions. Emergency systems screamed warnings, but there was nothing the crew could do. The vessel collapsed like an empty can, its biomechanical hull crumpling under impossible forces. When the void was at, Admiral Nexus Prime demanded as he watched ships throughout his fleet suffer similar fates. "Unknown weapon, sir," Commander Vex replied, his voice shaking. "They appear to be manipulating gravitational fields. Our sensors show massive space-time distortions originating from a human homeworld." Nexus Prime stared at his tactical display in disbelief. The humans were weaponizing gravity itself. How was such technology possible for a species that had only recently achieved spaceflight? The gravitational attacks continued with methodical precision. Earth's gravity became a massive weapon that could reach anywhere in the solar system. Valdarian ships found themselves caught in impossible tidal forces, crushed by artificial gravity fields, or flung away from their formations by gravitational slingshots. Captain Danny Wright's lightning strike led the final assault phase of the human counterattack. His target was the Eternal Dominion itself, Admiral Nexus Prime's massive flagship. The alien dreadnought was 10 times larger than Wright's destroyer, bristling with enough weapons to level a city. "All right, people," Wright announced his crew. "This is our chance to end this war quickly. One precise strike on their command ship, and the whole fleet will collapse." Lieutenant Mills looked up from her station. "Captain, that ship has enough firepower to vaporize us instantly. How are we supposed to get close enough to damage it?" Wright smiled grimly. "By giving them exactly what they expect, then doing something completely different." The lightning strike accelerated directly toward the Eternal Dominion, followed by 6 other human ships. To Valdarian sensors, it looked like a desperate suicide attack by ships with no other options. Admiral Nexus Prime watched the approaching human vessels with satisfaction. Finally, an attack he understood. "All batteries, target the leading ships. Destroy them before they can reach us." The flagship's massive plasma batteries opened fire, filling space with deadly energy. The human ships flew straight into barrage, making no attempt to evade or defend themselves. It looked exactly like the kind of futile heroic gesture that primitive species often attempted when facing superior force. But as the plasma beams reached the human formation, something unexpected happened. The ships flickered and vanished. "What?" Nexus Prime stepped forward in shock. "Where did they go?" The human vessels reappeared a split second later, but now they were inside the Eternal Dominion's defensive perimeter. They had used microjump technology, extremely short-range teleportation devices that most species considered too dangerous for combat use. "Impossible," breathed Commander Vex. "Micro-jumping inside of gravity is suicide. The navigation calculations alone. The lightning strike materialized less than a kilometer from the Eternal Dominion's hull. At this range, the flagship's massive size worked against it. The great ship's weapons couldn't depress far enough to target something so close. "Now!" Wright shouted. His ship fired a single weapon, but it wasn't a conventional missile or energy beam. Instead, the lightning strike deployed humanity's most feared innovation, a quantum cascade bomb. The device was smaller than a human fist, but it carried enough destructive potential to crack a moon. When it penetrated the Eternal Dominion's hull, it began converting the ship's own matter into energy. The massive dreadnought started to glow from within as its molecular structure broke down at the quantum level. Admiral Nexus Prime felt his ship beginning to die beneath his feet. All hands abandoned ship. Emergency evacuation. But there wasn't time. The quantum cascade spread through the Eternal Dominion's biomechanical hull like fire through dry grass. Emergency systems failed one by one as the ship's living components were consumed by the reaction. "Captain Wright," came Admiral Morrison's voice over the communications channel. "Excellent work. Exit the area immediately." The lightning strike micro-jumped away from the dying flagship, just as a quantum cascade reached critical mass. The Eternal Dominion, pride of the Valdarian Royal Fleet, became a miniature star for 3 seconds before collapsing into a cloud of superheated plasma. The death of their flagship sent shockwaves through the remaining Valdarian forces. Ships that had fought with disciplined courage suddenly began to waver. Some captains attempted to continue the battle, but others started looking for escape routes. Dr. Park monitored the alien fleet's communications from her command center. "Admiral Morrison, we're intercepting massive amounts of military traffic from the enemy. They're requesting new orders, reporting casualties, asking for permission to withdraw. Any response in their high command?" "Negative, sir. It appears their command structure was entirely dependent on Admiral Nexus Prime's flagship. With the Eternal Dominion destroyed, they have no central coordination." This was another advantage of human military doctrine. Earth's forces were designed to operate independently if necessary. Every ship captain could make tactical decisions without waiting for orders from above. The Valdarians, with their rigid hierarchy, became paralyzed when their command structure was disrupted. Commander Sullivan seized the moment. "All human ships, this is Sullivan. Enemy command and control is broken. Implement Operation Cleanup. Let's finish this." The human fleet pressed their advantage ruthlessly. Ships that had been fighting defensively suddenly went on the offensive. Von Neumann machines swarmed over damaged alien vessels, consuming them faster than they could be repaired. The gravitational lens array continued to crush enemy formations with invisible fists of twisted space-time. King Zephyros watched his greatest military force disintegrate through his neural link. Ship after ship winked out of existence. Captains who had served him faithfully for centuries died in explosions of fire and vacuum. The Royal Conquest fleet, symbol of Valdarian might, was being systematically annihilated by a species he had dismissed as insignificant. "General Kithara," he said, his voice hollow with defeat, "order the surviving ships to withdraw. Immediate retreat to the outer system. My lord, if we withdraw now, the humans will know they could defeat us. Every world in the Empire will see this as weakness." Zephyros looked at his tactical displays, watching the final ships of his fleet flee from human space. "They already know, General. The question now is whether we can salvage anything from this disaster." The Battle of Earth lasted 6 hours and 17 minutes. When it ended, fewer than 400 ships remained of the mighty force that had entered the system. The rest were debris, expanding clouds of plasma, or raw materials for human von Neumann machines. Admiral Morrison received the final battle reports in his command center. "Confirmed enemy retreat," announced Lieutenant Cross. "All remaining alien ships are fleeing the system at maximum speed." Morrison nodded with quiet satisfaction. "Signal all ships. Stand down from combat alert, but maintain readiness. Dr. Park, how long before we can expect reinforcements?" Park consulted her data. Based on intercepted communications, the nearest major Valdarian fleet is 3 weeks away. But I don't think they'll be coming here anytime soon. "Why not?" Park smiled. "Because word of this battle is already spreading across their empire. Every species they've conquered is hearing about how Earth destroyed the Royal Conquest fleet. I suspect King Zephyros has bigger problems to worry about than revenge." In his crystal throne room, King Zephyros sat in stunned silence. Reports were flooding in from across his empire. Rebellions on conquered worlds. Fleet commanders questioning orders. Subject species refusing to pay tribute. The humans had done more than defend their world. They had shattered the myth of Valdarian invincibility. And myths, once broken, could never be fully repaired. King Zephyros sat motionless on his crystal throne, staring at displays that showed the ruins of his empire's greatest military force. The neural connections that had once carried the confidence of 10,000 ship captains now transmitted only silence and death. For the first time in 3 millennia of absolute rule, the king of 847 star systems felt powerless. "My lord," General Kithara approached the throne with careful steps. Her 4 arms hung at her sides, no longer moving with their usual confident gestures. The final casualty reports have arrived. Zephyros didn't look at her. His glowing eyes remained fixed on the tactical displays. Tell me. 9,612 ships destroyed. 388 vessels managed to escape human space. Total crew losses. Kithra's voice faltered. Over 12 million of our finest warriors. The numbers hung in the air like a death sentence. The Royal Conquest fleet had been the pride of the Valdarian Empire, assembled over centuries and representing the best military technology in known space. It had conquered 47 worlds without suffering a single major defeat. Now it was gone, destroyed in less than 7 hours by a species that didn't even have proper biomechanical technology. How? Zephyros whispered. How did this happen? Kithra activated a holographic display showing the battle's progression. The humans fought like no other species we've encountered, my lord. They violated every principle of civilized warfare. Their weapons learned and adapted during combat. They used their own defensive positions as explosives. They deployed self-replicating machines that consumed our ships to build more enemies. The king watched the tactical replay in horrified fascination. He saw his magnificent fleet enter the human system in perfect formation. He watched as hidden asteroid weapons tore apart his advance guard. He witnessed the impossible sight of human ships teleporting through space, defying every law of safe navigation. They weaponized their entire star system, Kithra continued. Every asteroid, every piece of debris, even their planet's gravity field became part of their defense network. It wasn't a battle, my lord. It was a trap that had been preparing for decades. Zephyros finally turned to look at his general. What are you telling me? That these primitives planned this defeat years before we even knew they existed? Evidence suggests they've been preparing for invasion since they first achieved interstellar flight 50 years ago. Every mining expedition, every space station, every seemingly peaceful exploration mission was actually part of a massive defensive buildup. The king stood and walked to the great window that showed the stars of his empire. Each point of light represented worlds that bowed to his will, species that served his empire. But now, many of those lights seem dimmer somehow. General, what is the status of our remaining fleets? Kithra's expression grew even more troubled. That's our greatest problem, my lord. Word of the defeat is spreading faster than we can control it. The subject worlds are learning that our royal fleet was destroyed by a single primitive planet. And how are they responding to this news? Rebellion, my lord. Open revolt on 17 worlds. The Centauri colonies have declared independence. The vegan mining worlds have stopped shipping tribute. Even the warrior clans of Arcturus are questioning their loyalty odes. Zephyros closed his eyes, feeling the weight of his empire's collapse. For thousands of years, Valdarian rule had been maintained through a careful balance of superior technology and the fear of overwhelming retaliation. If any world dared to rebel, the royal fleet would arrive to demonstrate the price of defiance. But the royal fleet no longer existed. What about our remaining military forces? He asked desperately. Scattered across the empire maintaining order, my lord. The largest concentration is Admiral Thane's Grand Armada near the Galactic core, but that force numbers only 3,000 ships. Not enough to simultaneously suppress rebellions and launch new conquests. The throne room's communication systems activated, filling the air with urgent messages from across the empire. Planetary governors begged for military support. Fleet commanders reported rising tensions among their crews. Trade convoys demanded escort protection as pirate activity increased. The empire that had seemed unshakable that morning was crumbling by the hour. There's something else, my lord, Kithra said reluctantly. Our intelligence networks are reporting unusual activity throughout human space. What kind of activity? They're not celebrating their victory. Instead, they appear to be studying it. Our surviving ship captains report that human vessels followed them partway out of the system, not to attack, but to observe their retreat patterns. They're learning from this battle just as they learned during it. Zephyros felt a chill that had nothing to do with the throne room's temperature. You mean they're preparing for our return? Worse, my lord. Intelligence suggests they're preparing to come to us. The king stared at his general in disbelief. Impossible. They're a single world. We're an empire of 847 systems. A single world that just destroyed our greatest fleet, Kithra reminded him. My lord, we may have awakened something that we're not prepared to face. Reports continue to flood in from across the empire. The humans weren't content to simply defend their system. They were building new ships, upgrading their weapons, and most terrifyingly, they were sharing their technology with other species. The Rigel Coalition has received human technical advisors, Kithra reported, reading from the latest intelligence summaries. The Tau Ceti rebels are now using human-designed weapons. Even some of our own subject worlds are secretly requesting human assistance. Zephyros slumped back into his throne. The neural connections felt cold against his skull. How long do we have before they're ready to take offensive action? Unknown, my lord. Human technology advances at a rate we've never seen before. Our analysts estimate they could field a significant interstellar force within months rather than years. The king accessed his neural link, trying to get a sense of his empire's true condition. What he found was chaos. Ship captains requesting new orders. Planetary governors reporting civil unrest. Trade officials complaining about disrupted commerce. But most disturbing were the reports from intelligence operatives throughout the galaxy. The story of Earth's victory was spreading everywhere, carried by traders, refugees, and electronic communications. Every species that had ever been conquered by the Valdarians was learning that resistance was possible. General, Zephyros said slowly, prepare a message to the human homeworld. What kind of message, my lord? A formal communication, from one sovereign power to another. Kithra looked surprised. Sir, are you acknowledging them as equals? I'm acknowledging them as superiors, the king replied bitterly. They've proven they can destroy our finest forces. They've demonstrated tactical innovations we never imagined, and now they're inspiring rebellion throughout our empire. The generals for arms moved nervously. What will you say to them? Zephyros stood and walked to his communication panel. For the first time in his long reign, he would send a message not as a conqueror, but as a defeated enemy seeking mercy. I will offer them what they want most, he said, which is peace, complete withdrawal from their region of space, formal recognition of human territorial claims, and most importantly, a guarantee that the Valdarian Empire will never again threaten Earth or its allies. Kithra stared at her king in shock. My lord, such an agreement would be seen as a sign of weakness throughout the Empire. The Empire is already weak, Zephyros replied. Our strength was an illusion based on fear of our military might. That fear is gone now. We must adapt to new realities. He began composing the message, choosing each word carefully. This communication would be studied by human leaders, analyzed by their artificial intelligence systems, and probably shared with every species in the galaxy. Admiral Morrison of Earth, he began, I am King Zephyros of the Valdarian Empire. I write to acknowledge the defeat of our forces in your system and propose terms for a lasting peace between our peoples. As he continued writing, Zephyros realized he was creating more than just a surrender document. He was acknowledging a fundamental shift in galactic power. The humans had proven that innovation and preparation could overcome size and tradition. More importantly, they had proven that warfare itself was evolving. The old rules of conquest through superior firepower no longer applied when facing an enemy that treated combat as a science to be perfected rather than a ritual to be observed. The king finished his message and transmitted it toward Earth. Then he sat back in his throne and waited for humanity's response, knowing that whatever they decided would determine the fate of his empire. For the first time in 3,000 years, King Zephyros was no longer the one making demands. He was the one hoping for mercy from a species he had tried to exterminate. The crystal throne room, once a symbol of absolute power, now felt more like a prison. And outside its walls, an empire built on fear and conquest began its long journey toward either reformation or complete collapse. 6 months after the Battle of Earth, Admiral Jake Morrison stood in the newly constructed Galactic Defense Conference Center in Geneva. The massive building had been built specifically to host the first interstellar diplomatic gathering ever held on Earth. Representatives from dozens of species filled the Great Hall, all eager to witness humanity demonstrate the defensive capabilities that had shocked the galaxy. Morrison looked out at the assembled delegates with quiet satisfaction. Beings from 43 different star systems had come to Earth seeking protection, military advice, or simply to understand how a single world had defeated the mighty Valdarian Empire. Ladies, gentlemen, and honored guests, Morrison began, his voice carrying easily through the hall's advanced sound system. 6 months ago, many of you believed that resistance to Valdarian conquest was futile. Today, we gather to prove that cooperation between free worlds can create something stronger than any empire. The audience included former Valdarian subjects who had declared independence after hearing about Earth's victory. There were representatives from the Rigel Coalition, the free worlds of Tau Ceti, and even delegation from the warrior clans of Arcturus. All had come to learn from humanity's example. Dr. Lisa Park stepped forward to the presentation podium. Her role had expanded from Chief of Defensive Systems to Earth's primary military advisor for interstellar affairs. Today, we will demonstrate the technologies and tactics that enabled our victory. But first, I want to address the most common question we've received from our new allies. She activated a holographic display showing the solar system's defensive network. Many of you have asked how Earth managed to destroy 10,000 Valdarian ships with such a small defending force. The answer lies not in the weapons themselves, but in how we thought about the problem. The display zoomed in to show individual weapon platforms hidden throughout the asteroid belt. While other species tried to match Valdarian power with power, we chose a different approach. We made the entire solar system into a single defensive weapon. Ambassador Thane from the Rigel Coalition raised one of his 6 arms. Dr. Park, our intelligence services estimate that Earth's defensive preparations require decades of work and enormous resources. How did you justify such expense for a threat that might never come? Ark smiled. Ambassador, humans have a saying, hope for the best, but prepare for the worst. Our history taught us that larger, more aggressive civilizations always try to conquer smaller ones. We simply assumed that space would be no different. Commander Kate Sullivan, now promoted to Admiral and serving as Earth's Minister of Defense, took the podium next. The key to our success was not any single weapon or technology. It was our philosophy of adaptive warfare. She activated a new display showing battle footage from a Valdarian engagement. Traditional military doctrine focuses on deploying superior force against key targets. Human doctrine focuses on learning faster than the enemy can adapt. The footage showed human weapons changing their behavior mid-battle, von Neumann machines reproducing from enemy wreckage, and ships using micro-jump technology in ways that violated standard safety protocols. We didn't try to fight a conventional battle, Sullivan explained. Instead, we turned combat itself into a learning laboratory. Every shot fired by our weapons made the next shot more accurate. Every destroyed platform provided data to improve the surviving ones. A delegate from the vegan colonies stood up. Admiral Sullivan, reports suggest that your victory was achieved using training equipment rather than your most advanced weapons. Is this accurate? Sullivan exchanged a glance with Morrison before answering. That's correct. The Battle of Earth was fought entirely with what we classify as basic defensive systems. Our advanced technologies were never deployed. A murmur of amazement rippled through the hall. The weapons that had crushed the Royal Conquest fleet were considered primitive by human standards. Which brings us to today's demonstration, Morrison announced. Dr. Park will now show you what our actual military capabilities look like. Park activated the hall's main holographic projector. A three-dimensional image of a star system appeared above the assembled delegates. It looked ordinary at first, a yellow star surrounded by planets and asteroid belts. This is the Kepler 442 system, Park explained. It's currently uninhabited, located about 40 light-years from Earth. We've been using it as a testing ground for our latest defensive innovations. The image zoomed in on what appeared to be an empty region of space. Suddenly, massive structures materialized, space stations, weapon platforms, and defensive networks that dwarfed anything Earth had used against the Valdarians. Our current defensive technology can create a fortified system from scratch in less than 30 days. Park continued. Self-replicating construction units harvest raw materials from asteroids and build weapons faster than any attacking force can destroy them. Ambassador Thane's translator struggled to convey his species' expression of shock. Dr. Park, are you saying you can turn any star system into an impregnable fortress in a matter of weeks? Impregnable is a strong word, Park replied diplomatically. But yes, our current technology allows rapid deployment of system-wide defensive networks. Any species that accepts our protection would receive similar installations. The implications were staggering. Earth wasn't just offering military alliance. They were offering to revolutionize defensive warfare throughout the galaxy. Captain Danny Wright, now commanding the newest vessel, the EDS Innovation, appeared via holographic link from deep space. "Good morning from the Proxima Centauri system," he said with a grin. "We're currently field testing our latest exploration and defense ship." The innovation materialized on Hall's main display. Unlike the angular, functional vessels Earth had used against the Valdarians, this ship was sleek and elegant, but its appearance was deceiving. "The innovation represents our latest philosophy of spacecraft design," Wright explained. "Instead of building single-purpose vessels, we've created adaptive platforms that can reconfigure themselves for any mission profile." The ship's hull began to shift and change. Sections unfolded to reveal weapon systems, manufacturing bays, and exploration equipment. Within minutes, the single vessel had transformed into a small fleet of specialized units. "Each ship carries enough manufacturing capability to build copies of itself," Wright continued. "A single exploration vessel could become a defensive fleet, a construction squadron, or a mobile research station as needed." The alien delegates watched in fascination as the innovation demonstrated capabilities that exceeded anything in their own fleets. But the most surprising revelation was yet to come. Admiral Morrison stepped forward again. 6 months ago, many of you asked how Earth planned to defend itself against future Valdarian attacks. Today, I can announce that such attacks are no longer concern. He activated a communication link to the Valdarian homeworld. The image of King Zephyros appeared, looking older and more tired than during his reign's peak. "Your Majesty," Morrison said formally, "thank you for joining us today." Zephyros bowed his head slightly. "Admiral Morrison, honored delegates, I appear before you to formally announce the Valdarian Empire's complete withdrawal from aggressive expansion policies." The hall erupted in surprised murmurs. The king who had once ruled 847 Star,